Hi, everyone. I take full credit for that film. You can clap. On behalf of Porter Square Books and our partner WBUR, welcome to beautiful City Space. If you don't know Porter Square Books, we're an independent employee-owned bookstore in the far north regions of Cambridge. Across the river, you can get a visa and go there. We have a full schedule of events, though few as exciting as this, and we have schedules outside at our table. Tonight, we're so delighted to welcome back to Porter Square Books Colum McCann and our good friend Claire Messud, who will be in conversation with him. Colum is the Distinguished Professor of Creative Writing in the Master of Fine Arts program at Hunter College in New York. He has 6 previous novels and 3 collections of short stories, including the fabulous Let the Great World Spin, which won the National Book Award. He's won a slew of other awards, including a Pushcart Prize, and my personal favorite, which is that he was named a Chevalier des Arts et Lettres by the French government. So when you meet him in the signing line, instead of saying Colum, you can just call him Chevalier. His work has been translated into 35 languages, and he has appeared, as they say in the advertising business, wherever fine stories are told, including the New Yorker, Esquire, and the Paris Review, among many others. Claire Messud lives in Cambridge, is a regular at Porter Square Books. She's also written 6 novels, including the New York Times bestseller The Emperor's Children, which was longlisted for the Booker Prize. She's taught creative writing at Amherst, Kenyon, Yale, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and, like Colum, Hunter College. She, too, has won many awards, although I am disappointed to say she is not a Chevalier. So I got to see Colum at a book conference in January and grabbed an advance copy of the book. I read it the following week and was immediately floored and stunned, and I made everyone I know agree to read it. It is an extraordinary piece of work about 2 real people, Bassam Aramin and Rami Elhanan, both of whom we are incredibly honored and fortunate to have with us in attendance tonight. Also, the book gave me a new opportunity to learn a cool math Greek word, which Colum tells me is pronounced Apeirogon, but he doesn't speak Greek, and neither do I, so we don't really know. But it's one of those great words that you don't really know that there's a word that means this, and then you find out that it does. It means a polygon with an infinite number of sides, which is, of course, incredibly appropriate for what this book is about. I think it's going to be considered required reading for anyone who wants to engage thoughtfully with the conundrum of Israel and Palestine, which, of course, is one of the great conundrums of our time. Some people I spoke to said, maybe it's too politically left for me, or maybe it's not left enough. And my response to all of them was that the most remarkable thing about this book is it's not a political book. It's a book that deeply and directly speaks to a political situation, but it's fundamentally the story of 2 men, their personal tragedies and how those tragedies have affected them and taught them and shaped them and impelled them to take a role in trying to solve an unsolvable problem. It is about history and culture and art and war and literature and, once again, tightrope walking. But above all, it is about storytelling. Writing this past week in the New York Times, Julie Oringer called the book a brilliant act of novel-making and said that, quote, it leads us to experience the urgency of finding a solution to the underlying problem. She continues, it does far more than make an argument for peace. It is itself an agent of change. Please join me in welcoming Colum and Claire.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. Wow, thank you.
And welcome, Colum, and welcome, Rami and Bassam, who will come up and join us in a little while. And welcome, audience. Aren't we lucky? It's very exciting to have you here. So I thought we could just begin at the beginning. Mm-hmm. For those of you who've read even some of the novel, you understand that it's rather like a whirlwind, and there are many things in it. So to pick a place to begin is perhaps challenging. Right. But maybe we could start by you telling us a little bit about the inception of this novel and how it came about.
Well, it begins on a Thursday evening in November 5 years ago when I was on a trip to Israel and Palestine with non-profit group Tell Us and my own non-profit group Narrative 4, which is a story exchange organization. And there was a group of us going around, and we'd spend a couple of weeks sort of like getting the nuances of what was happening over there. And 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm a bit tired. I've possibly been overserved the night before. I don't know. I walk into this room, and these 2 men are sitting there, and they're ordinary men. And I just think, okay, I'm going to listen to these people talk. And within about half an hour, every pinch of oxygen was gone from the air for me, and my life was totally changed by listening to the power of these 2 men talking about their daughters and how they lost their daughters. 13-year-old Smadar, almost 14, and 10-year-old Abir, and how they were using the force of their grief as a weapon for peace. I went away, I didn't know what to do. Except I knew I was changed. Tried to write another novel, failed spectacularly, and then said, I have got to go back to these 2 men. And then I plagued them for the next few years. And they have many stories to tell about our time together. I wanted to write about it because I think we're all there. It's the conjunction of 3 continents. It's the birthplace of at least 3 major religions, and I feel even as a kid growing up in Dublin that there was a Jerusalem there somewhere, and that we're all somehow maybe complicit or maybe involved, and the novel really is about the 2 girls and how we all keep coming back to their story over and over and over again.
Yes, and so powerfully. And when you say you came back to this and you thought, I have to write about this, I'm just wondering whether in that moment your spirit felt terrified or exhilarated, or as though you were almost in a sort of religious sense shouldering a calling. I'm wondering what that felt like.
I was terrified. I mean, I know it's crazy. I went to my publishers and said, guess what? I'm going to write about Israel and Palestine. They're like, oh. And then I said, guess what? I'm going to call it a title called Apeirogon. They're like, oh.
No, they said, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, exactly. And then they said, oh, and then they called me in a couple of times. But they've been fantastic about it. And I said at one stage, the only things that are worth doing are the things that might possibly break your heart. And I kind of like that idea. When we worked in Hunter College, we like to throw down things in front of the students and say, I like my students to live up to the idea that, Samuel Beckett says, no matter, try again, fail better. Or the Vonnegut idea that we should be continually jumping off of cliffs and developing our wings on the way down. I wanted to know about Israel and Palestine. I knew absolutely nothing about it. I was so confused. Now that I've spent 5 years and I've spent time with these guys and read virtually every book that I could get my hands on, I'm even more confused. But one of the purposes of the book is to confuse the reader, especially in the first 30, 40 pages, so that they will say, oh, I'm confused, and then maybe acknowledge the confusion, because I think we're a little bit scared to acknowledge that we're confused these days, especially in America, maybe all over the world, but we're all saying, oh, I'm red and you're blue and nobody's purple anymore, and I think that if we can acknowledge our confusion and say, this is tough, I don't know, but then you get to the human heart of the story, which is absolutely, the pulsing, beating heart of the story is what Bassam and Rami and their families have experienced. So I wanted to acknowledge all of that stuff and then get to the story of the girls.
Mm-hmm. Would this be a moment for you to read a little something for us?
I'll read a little something. I'd love to read a little something, and I hope that's okay. And just to give you a little flavour of the book, and so it's told in 1,001 cantos, if you will, and it sort of jumps and jumps and jumps, but. I'm going to begin with a little bit about time by Borges. And Borges says in number 81, being with you and not being with you is the only way I have to measure time. And I'll just tell you this, and it's even hard how brave for these men to sit here and even listen to this. Smadar was killed by a suicide bomber in 1997. And Abir was killed by a rubber bullet, shot by a border guard to the back of her head in 2007. Sivan 82. Sivan Zarka, 14 years old, was blown into the air alongside Smadar. Her parents were French. She had lived once in Algeria. They had recently moved to Jerusalem, where Sivan was studying with Smadar at the Gymnasia High School in Rehavia. Yael Botvin was also 14 years old. She had just begun 9th grade at the Israel Arts and Science Academy. She had made Aliyah from Los Angeles with her parents 8 years before. Rami Koshevili was 20 years old. He worked as a clerk in the Yehuda Bazaar selling sports clothes. He had emigrated from Georgia in the Soviet Union. Eli Markowitz, an office clerk, a book lover, a pacifist, was 42 years old. His family had originally come from the Black Sea coast of Romania. 83, to make Aliyah, to ascend. 84, Markowitz was having lunch in an outdoor cafe with his 11-year-old son. The boy was thrown backwards through the air, but his fall was softened by a potted palm situated in front of the window. 85. So often, thought Rami, the ordinary can save us. 86. When Rami came back from the Yom Kippur War, long-haired, blue-eyed, exhausted, he began to work as a graphic designer, drawing posters for the right wing, the left wing, the center too. He was a maverick. He didn't care. If they wanted fear, he would give them fear. If they wanted glamour, he would give them glamour. Controversy, nationalism, pessimism, anything at all. Schmaltz, too. No problem. He could easily deliver a bouquet of bullshit. A raised fist for the new Israel, an expansive border, the Nile to the Euphrates, a wide-eyed child, a sinister stare, a wounded dove, a long, elegant leg, anything at all. Make it smart, make it crude, make it rude. He didn't care. He had no politics, no party allegiance, no safe alignment. To have a house, a family, to be undisturbed, an Israeli life. That's what he wanted. A good job, a mortgage, a safe street, leafy, no knock on the door, no midnight phone calls. What he wanted was the spectacularly banal. The worst of it would be a long line at the falafel joint, a short change at the cheese store, a mistake by the mailman. Rami did what he did best, drawing, sloganeering, provoking with paintbrush and pencil. He started his own firm, advertising and graphic design. He delighted in ruffling feathers. Most everyone liked him, and if they didn't, he laughed it off. Always the clown, the joker, the man at the edge. And then he met Nurit. She was a beauty. Fiery, red-haired, liberal. She didn't care what others thought, smart as a whip. From a good family, a general's daughter, a pioneer, an original, she went generations back. She took that oxygen from the air. He was rougher-edged, raw, more working class, but she liked his charm, his wit, his ability to turn on a word. He was reckless. He made her laugh. He wasn't going to let her go. She had the brains and he had the instinct. He courted her, wrote her letters, drew pictures for her. She was a peacenik. He sent her red roses. She returned them for white. He was smitten. He had served as a tank mechanic in the army. He fixed her father's car. The general approved. They were married in Nurit's house. A rabbi held a service. Together they broke the glass and Mazel Tov rang around the house. They had their 18 minutes of yichud. It was tradition. Why not? And the years, they tumbled on. The kids grew. The boys were full of pep. Smadar was a pistol. A firecracker. She loved to run around the house. She danced on the table. She cartwheeled in the garden. She skinned her knees. She knocked a tooth out. Girl stuff. Time, then, it sauntered on. High school degrees and theatre, and then came military service. Nurit didn't like it, but Elik, the oldest, went anyway. He shined his shoes and he twirled his beret on his finger. It was the done thing. To refuse to serve was to isolate was to lose was un-Israeli. It was duty, pure and simple. And Rami recognized it. He had done it, and his sons would do it too, and eventually his daughter as well. Rami took photos of Smadar in her grandfather's army fatigues and her brother's red beret on her head, and they laughed as she marched Keystone style around the room. And he would describe it years later as his life in a bubble, his years in an open-neck shirt, his role in a talking head song. 87. The sound of the rollers on the cold metal tray, the slide of the plastic shoe covers on the shiny tile floor, the soft hiss of the refrigerator door sealing behind them, and the morgue then, silent, as Rami walked through. 88, and you may ask yourself, what is that beautiful house? And you may ask yourself, where does that highway go to? And you may ask yourself, am I right? Am I wrong? And you may say to yourself, my God, what have I done? Last section. State your name. Bassam Aramin. From Al-Khalil, Hebron. Age 42. Who are you traveling with? My wife and children. Destination England. Where in England? Bradford. Never heard of it. It's a university. What's your purpose? To go to university. Are you trying to be smart with me? No. Where did you get this permit? I explained that to the other officers. Do I look like the other officers? From the office in Jerusalem. What's your purpose in going to university? To study. Are you a professor? No. How old are you? 42, I told you. And you're studying? Yes. Where did you go to school? The village in Sair. Where's that? Near Hebron. Did you finish school? My studies were interrupted. What does that mean? Interrupted. I didn't finish school, no. Why are you smiling, Bassam? I always smile as part of what I do. I like to smile. Do you want to miss another plane? No. Then wipe that grin off your face and tell me, where did you learn Hebrew? After school. After school, is that so? Yes. I have your file here, Bassam. I know who you are. Then why did you ask me? Don't be a smartass. Answer the question. After school, I learnt it after school. Then I worked for the authority, first in sports, then in archives. Then I was accepted into the program at Bradford. I have a special permit. I have the right to go there. Why are you going to university now? Because I was offered a place. 25 years without studying, and all of a sudden, Bassam, Aramin, you're an intellectual? I never said that. I'm going as a student. You're going for how long? A year. The permit is for 2 years. Yes. And you're going to study what? The Shoah. Pardon me? The Holocaust. I heard you. You're studying the Shoah. You're an Arab. You're a Muslim. You're a terrorist. 7 years in prison, you attack us, you throw grenades, you terrorize us, and now you're studying the Shoah, you say you're an intellectual? Is this some sort of joke, Bassam? What do you think I am, stupid? I don't think you're stupid at all. Is that what you're telling me? You're going to England so you can tell us how the Shoah didn't happen? No. What do you mean, no? One of the things I have learned is that nobody wants to be expelled from history, and I am not interested in denying the truth. Is that so? I don't believe in violence of any sort. Since when, Bassam? Since a long time ago. Really? Yes. So how many terrorists are you going to be meeting in Bradford, Bassam? I don't know. What's a terrorist? Can you define it for me? You're asking me? My wife is waiting. My children are waiting. We're going to miss another plane, and I have to say that I'm a little terrified right now. Yes. Oh, you're a real smart-ass, Bassam, aren't you? I don't think so. State your name. I gave it 12 times already. Name. Bassam Aramin. Is that your child crying? I can't see through walls. Why is she crying, Bassam? I don't know. Probably because she's tired. We've been waiting a long time. Can't your wife shut her up? My wife is tired too. We've been here for 8 hours. I don't know how many flights we've missed. How many children do you have, Bassam? 5. I used to have 6.
Thank you. When you embarked on this, and Rami and Bassam will come and speak with us about that process in a minute. But so looking back at your earlier novels, the weaving of many threads has been a common process or a common structure, but this is on a new scale. Right. But at the center of this tapestry is what I think maybe you yourself have referred to as a documentary fiction, is drawing, as we could hear from what you read, from actual life, and I'd love to ask you about the responsibilities of that, the constraints of that, how as a novelist, when imagining is so much of what we do, how you manage to find the balance.
Yeah. So the bizarre thing, thank you so much for because the bizarre thing is I'm sitting up here and my characters from my novel are about to walk on stage. And to me that's a really beautiful thing because it affirms so much of what I feel about in my life. I met my grandfather once at a nursing home in London. I was living in Dublin. My grandfather was a drunk in London. I got to meet him one time. But he had been around Dublin on June 16, 1904, when Ulysses was written. And later, many, many years later, I actually got to know my grandfather more through the pages of Ulysses than through that one meeting. So I think what fiction can do, if fiction can, Clifford Geertz talks about the real being imagined and the imagined being real. So this imagined world that Joyce created somehow allowed me access to the blood that's still thumping in me right now, greater knowledge to do so. So I like that line between fiction and non-fiction, even though I'm not even sure what it is. I like the word stories and storytelling now. And if I worked for the Library of Congress, I'd be fired immediately because I'd be filing certain books, in different places. I think it's a really important question. I don't know, how do you feel? I mean, it's a really important question for the novelist right now, isn't it? What's true? What's not true?
Right, and I mean, and that's why I asked the question, and I feel that's our commitment. The novelist's commitment is to the essence of truth, to something that's humanly true and that's more transcendently true than necessarily following the lines of facts. But that's complicated territory in a
Really complicated territory.
in this particular historical moment when the term alternative fact has been launched into the world.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I wondered, is there anything? I mean, just thinking, there are so many small stories and details in this novel. But to sort of step away even from the central narratives, and you know, I guess I want to ask: is there anything in there made up of full cloth?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Rami will tell you some of it actually, because Rami called me when I first sent it to them. It's like, okay, so Rami drives a motorbike, right? And it's a Yamaha, 800, and he drives it fast, and he does this in the book. And I drove through Jerusalem with him, like hanging onto the back of the bike, going yeah. But when I wrote the book, I gave him a bike with gears. It is 800 cc's and everything, but his actual bike is an automatic, but it's much sexier to click through the gears. It's much more fictional, and I mean that. But also I want you to think about it as a reader, because I want the reader to be on the bike. You're not on the bike quite as much when you think of it as an automatic. You are more on the bike when you think that you're clicking through the gears, and that's the truth. So there's me taking the truth and shaping it and actually making it like deeper in certain ways. I mean, and there's lots of little moments like that. Okay, so Bassam, and he will tell you about his relationship to the book now, but Bassam doesn't even know this. There's a scene in the book where he takes his daughter's candy bracelet and he holds it so tight in his hand that his hand gets stained orange, and he gets stopped at a checkpoint, and they think it's Semtex, because Semtex can stain your hand orange. Now, Abir, the moment before she died, bought candy in the store, and Bassam saw this candy and everything, but he didn't carry it with him to lectures. But I had him carry it with him to lectures, and there are little things like that. I'm even sad now that I gave away that secret, but there are things in the book where. I just wanted I want the reader to feel what these men have felt, because it's so absolutely extraordinary that I want us to, and maybe we should bring them up right.
Yes.
Right
Can
now.
I ask one question,
Yeah,
just as
please.
we do? Tell me, please. I want then for Dahlia to be fictional.
Yeah.
Is she fictional?
I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, just because, yeah. Okay, gentlemen, or the people who will help us and bring a couple of chairs. Maybe could we ask for them to come so there's a place?
So,
Here they
Rami Elhanan and Bassam Aramin, my good friends from Jerusalem and Jericho. Please give them a round of applause.
Who are the co-directors of the Parents Circle Families Forum, a joint Israeli and Palestinian organization made up of 600 bereaved families who share their stories to promote peace. Thank you for being here. So you both actually knew one another long before you knew Colum, and you have been engaged in telling your stories around the world to all different audiences, including in the United States. Why'd you entrust your stories to this guy?
In fact, our life before Colum and after Colum. Yeah, really, there are people you can live with them years. And when they meet you, you say to them, sorry, how you spell your name? And there are people you can meet them hour and a half, and they will be friends forever. This is what happened with Colum.
Can I just say that Bassam met his wife for a total of 2 hours and then married her? That's true, right?
You wrote, as I heard yesterday, for 34 days when we met her and when we get married. And the true, it's unbelievable. It was 33 days, and not 34 days. Yes, it's true.
Well, for me, the minute we sat there in Bejala, and I saw the tears in his eyes, a click was in the air, and I felt connection. And I tell this story thousands of times, and I feel like an actor on the stage with a mission. And the mission is to give some sense to this senseless killing. My feeling is that Smadar and Abir are standing behind us, telling us, showing us, this is what you should do, because we were not fighters, we are not participating in the conflict, we are victims. And the killers of us are also victims. And this sense of mission accompany ever since I lost my daughter 22 years ago, and every day and every hour, 24 hours a day, 59 seconds of every minute. And the wound does not heal, and the pain never goes away. And this is it. The question is, what do you do with it? Now, when Colum stepped in, when he was crying like a baby, and then asked permission to write about this, it was for me the most natural thing to say, go ahead. It's your story, not mine.
Mm. Have you read it? Have you read the novel?
I read it through the 17 hours of the journey to come here. In many ways, it's like listen to yourself recorded. The sound is a little bit weird. And the parts about me, about my family, about my daughter are difficult to read, so I read it quickly. But I think it's a masterpiece. I couldn't let it down my hand. I couldn't stop reading it. It throws you from angle to angle, from environment to environment, from story to story, from so many layers that it's simply interesting. And I think it's a must, because it's a way of telling a truth that is not very popular today. This very sight of these two crazy people who are...
Speak of yourself.
who are, instead of doing the most natural thing, we have all the reasons on earth to hate each other.
Yeah.
And we have all the reason on earth to want to kill each other. And we call each other brother. And we appear in front of Israeli kids and Palestinian kids in high schools, which they are not as polite and receptive as you are. It's like walking into the open mouth of an active volcano. And this very sight and this very incident creates the crack in the wall that we are looking for, the little question mark, the little doubt, which allows a little light to come in. A little light can drive away a lot of darkness. And this is the basic element of our work together, of the Parent Circle, 600 families who lost their loved ones and are trying to show that there is another way and it can be different.
I start to read the book, but I promise Colum that I will try to read it. It's very difficult for me. Very difficult.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Can I just say though, like that one of the things that was gorgeous about this is that I went to them and I asked them and they said yes, and then I would go across and then I would like read sections in the office in Beit Jala every now and then, or send things over and I gave them the novel over and over and over again. But the most beautiful moment just came last week when both men said, like, I've read everything about us, like on the internet and online, but this was impossible to read. And then that seemed to me to be to say that, I don't know, they allowed me into their space in the most extraordinary way. And they didn't ask me to change anything. Mm-hmm. They didn't say, you must say this, you must say that.
Because we don't read it. He sent us 100 pages. It's impossible. So I said to Rami, summarize it for me. Then I decided to write my own book. Because really we trust him, yes.
But it actually raises for me a question that is perhaps a little bit, I don't mean it to be a difficult question, but it's one that's on my mind. When you guys go to schools, the students are sort of stuck there. They they don't choose to be in the classroom, and then they learn something sometimes in spite of themselves. But do you have a concern about how to reach the people who won't want to read the book? How do you reach the people who won't want to read the book? Or do you feel that's not my concern? I've written the book and it exists in the world, and maybe in 20 years somebody will be ready to read it.
I'm waiting for Greta to come along. And guess what? I think Greta might be 75 or she might be 93. She doesn't have to be 15. I'm waiting for Greta to come along and take not this book, or not even the stories that Rami and Bassam have, but this whole idea, this whole issue, and turn it inside out. They both talk about the nuclear moment when you throw out this story, you put a crack in the wall, and guess what? Walls do fall. They do. The Berlin Wall fell. Bassam talks about the miracle of the fact that there's a German embassy in Tel Aviv. What? There's an Israeli embassy in Berlin. What? And I think simply we must tell the story over and over and over again. Their incredible grace is that they sometimes tell their story 6-7 times a day. People like me, and I felt that it was the first time it had ever been said in the world. So I think that we as storytellers, and these guys as storytellers, have to say it over and over and over again, and somebody will catch it. Somebody will catch it in some peculiar way, and something will happen. I have to believe that something will eventually happen. And if it doesn't happen, at least we tried. And to me, that's the most important thing. So I'm not going to force this book or these men's stories into the hands of people who don't do it. Although they get protests outside the schools. I mean, right? The protest goes on right now.
Well, you need to understand that we are drawing water from the ocean with a little spoon full of little holes. We are facing two very angry societies, full of anger and hatred. We are facing children which are victims of a socializing process, two educational systems that are designed to prepare the young generation to be able to sacrifice themselves when time comes. And this is being done by hiding the other side and demonizing the other side and dehumanizing the other side to the extent that it will be no problem for a young Israeli soldier to pull a trigger and kill a 10-year-old girl, or young angry Palestinian to blow himself up with 14-year-old little girl. So this is the reality that we are facing. It's our task to penetrate it, to get inside the minds and the hearts of these kids. No one can listen to us and remain the same. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, even if in the end of the class there will be only one kid, Israeli or Palestinian, who nods his head with acceptance to this message. It's a miracle. We save one drop of blood. One drop of blood in Judaism is the whole world. And the reaction that we get from the kids is amazing and overwhelming. And this is the reason why we do it. We need to put these cracks in the walls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree with him.
Colum, I wonder if you want to say anything about narrative 4 in this
Sure.
moment, which is a storytelling.
Well, I went there with Narrative 4, and Narrative 4 is a global non-profit story exchange organization. We have loads of information at the table. Hilary and Beth are out there this evening. But I just want to tell you, this is what it is. Because, okay, these men are talking about Israel and Palestine, but guess what? I also think they're talking about Boston. I also think they're talking about the South Bronx. I also think they're talking about Dublin and Belfast and Kentucky and so on, because they're basically saying we need to know each other, and we're at a crucial moment in this country where we're not actually really knowing each other. Mea culpa. I'm coming indoors. I'm shutting down the curtains. I'm saying, this is my territory. Don't mess with my truth. I am the only one who knows the truth. We're not being complicated. We're not allowing complications. And one little story. What we do at Narrative 4 is, we've tens of thousands of exchanges all over the world. But one particular exchange that we're running right now, in the South Bronx, the second poorest congressional district in the United States, and kids from a school in Floyd County, Kentucky. Traditionally sort of African American and or immigrant here, traditionally white and or Cherokee there. Traditionally, urban, rural, blue, red, and they're terrified of each other. They're terrified because they think he's not going to know why my grandfather owns a gun. And, he's going to say that I'm a racist, or she's going to do this. And then we bring them together and they tell stories. And the magic of Narrative 4 is that you tell my story, I tell yours. So this boy, Rick, who's down in Kentucky, meets Fatima. And Fatima is a Muslim from, the South Bronx, and she wears the hijab and everything. And Rick has to say, hi, my name is Fatima. And Fatima has to say, hi, my name is Rick, and the reason I like carrying a gun is this, and this. And suddenly their hearts are blown completely open, and they have to embrace what is essentially the American spirit, which is the spirit of contradiction, which is the Whitman-esque notion that we are large, we contain multitudes. One of the reasons why I still think that this is such a great country is because it allowed people to contain multitudes. We weren't being put in little boxes. But now we're putting ourselves in little boxes, and what Narrative 4 wants to do is essentially what these men have been doing for years and years and years, is saying that we need to know each other. And Bassam says, amazingly, beautifully, he says, if we don't know each other above ground, we will eventually know each other 6 feet below ground. And you know what? It's much better, I think, to know each other above ground than below ground. Don't you think?
Rami talk about the kids. Many kids in the Palestinian schools, they don't believe Rami is a Jew because he's a human being. He's a good man when we talk to them. Because those kids, the only Jews or Israelis they know is the Israeli soldiers. Those are the Israelis that the Palestinians know. Many Israelis, they believe that I have a Jewish roots, maybe. Because there is no Arabs like this. How many Palestinians like you? It's the same picture in the Palestinian side. For that, we need to know each other as human beings. For that, like my relationship to Rami become over or above the conflict. We discover that we are human beings, and nothing worth to lose our kids. Our kids is more holy than any holy land. And for that we work, we will continue to work to spread the message all over the world. I promise Abir, I wrote on her grave, that you will live longer than your killer. No one will mention him, no one know his name, but everyone will know your name.
I understand that we are towards the end of this wonderful, amazing meeting.
No.
No, we go
I mean,
a long
we can,
way.
but we don't have to really. I mean, I know that we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and maybe we will take it.
But before the questions, I would like to convey a message which is extremely important for us. We are not sitting here for our own benefit. We are carrying a message. And when we finish, always when we finish a meeting, especially from people that come from abroad, I ask permission to ask the most important question.
Remember, Rami, we are abroad.
So we have to do this intellectual effort. And I tell them the most important question, which was not asked, is what can we do? What will be the message that we will take from these things? What will we dream about tonight? What will be the action that we will take tomorrow morning? My late father was an Auschwitz graduate. And 75 years ago, while they took my grandparents to the ovens back in Europe, the free and civilized world stood aside, never lifting one finger. And today, while these two crazy nations of ours are massacring each other without any mercy, while this genocide is taking place in Syria, while Turks are killing Kurds with American support in Iraq, and people are drowning in the Mediterranean like spies, the free and civilized world is standing aside, doing nothing, which is really horrible. What we ask of you, what we demand of you, is not to stand aside, because standing aside while a crime is being committed is also a crime. We don't want you to import our conflict to your society. You really have enough problems of your own. We don't need you to be pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. This will not help us. We demand of you to be pro-peace and to be against injustice and against this ongoing situation in what one people is dominating another people. This is the essence of the problem. It can be changed. It must change. Otherwise, we will all drown in our own blood. And I will finish with the message of a Jew. And I am a Jew, a proud Jew, with the utmost respect to my people, to my history, and my tradition. And I will tell you that ruling and oppressing and humiliating and occupying millions and millions of people for so many years without any democratic right is not Jewish, period. Not two ways about it. And being against it is not anti-Semitism. And if you get into an argument, you can quote me.
Remember, his name is Rami Elhanan.
You do your Darwish poem and then I'll do a little piece of my book and we'll
Absolutely, yes.
do your Darwish poem. Go on.
When I say Darwish, the people think I wrote it, which is okay. It's also how to help each other. He says, think of others. As you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Don't forget to feed the doves. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Don't forget those who seek peace. As you go to pay your water bill, think of others. Don't forget those who only have the clouds to drink from. As you speak freely with metaphors, think of others, of those who lost their right to speak. As you go home, your own home, think of others. Don't forget the people of tents. As you think of others, distant others, think of yourself and wish you are a candle in the darkness. Mahmoud Darwish. Thank you.
Was he Irish?
He's a Jew.
I want to thank Claire, who's been a hero of mine I want to thank Claire, who's been a hero, colleague, friend, for many years now, and
We're so young. It's only a couple. We're so young. I was.
yeah, well, 6
Just
months.
beginning.
No, but it's a real honor and pleasure to come here and to talk about these two organizations and this book, and we're going to be out in the hallways, and let's extend the conversation to one another, and maybe even suggest that you find someone tonight that you don't know, and talk with them, particularly somebody who might not traditionally be the sort of person that you would go and talk to. That's not kumbaya. That's not like silly, airy, fairy, pie in the sky sort of stuff. Stories are really muscular. Stories are really dangerous too. Stories can take your reputation away. Stories can take your life away, your house away, your country away. And so we recognize the power of stories and storytelling. But when people like Rami and Bassam are telling the truth, this deep truth, we get disturbed and knocked off balance in a beautiful way. And I'm just going to read you like a half page, which is really a summary of the book. This is the trailer for the book. It comes right in the very, very middle of the book, and basically it just tells you what the whole thing is about. 1001. Once upon a time, and not so long ago, and not so far away, Rami Elhanan, an Israeli, a Jew, a graphic artist, husband of Nurit, father of Elik and Guy and Yigal, father too of the late Smadar, travelled on his motorbike from the suburbs of Jerusalem to the Kremazan monastery in the mainly Christian town of Beit Jala, near Bethlehem, in the Judean hills, to meet with Bassam Aramin, a Palestinian, a Muslim, a former prisoner, an activist, born near Hebron, husband of Salwa, father of Arab and Arin and Muhammad and Ahmed and Hiba, father too of the late Abir, 10 years old, shot dead by an unnamed Israeli border guard in East Jerusalem almost a decade after Rami's daughter, Smadar, 2 weeks away from 14, was killed in the western part of the city by 3 Palestinian suicide bombers, Bashar Sawala, Youssef Shuli, and Tafik Yassin, from the village of Asira al-Shamia, near Nablus in the West Bank, a place of intrigue to the listeners gathered in the red brick monastery perched on the hillside in the mountains of the beloved by the terraced vineyard in the shadow of the wall, having come from as far apart as Belfast and Kyushu, Paris and North Carolina, Santiago and Brooklyn, Copenhagen and Terezin. On an ordinary day at the end of October, foggy, tinged with cold, to listen to the stories of Bassam and Rami, and to find within their stories another story, a song of songs, discovering themselves, you and me, in the stone-tiled chapel where we sit for hours, eager, hopeless, buoyed, confused, cynical, complicit, silence, our memories imploding, our synapses skipping in the gathering dark, remembering, while listening, all of those stories that are yet to be told.
So now, if you gentlemen are willing, we will open it to the audience for some questions. So I think Alex is there with the microphone. If there's
I think you can ask me the difficult questions, because I believe that haven't the Jewish people suffering enough?
Hi, I really want to thank you, Rami and Bassam, for doing this. I'm just so sick of the hate, so sick of it. I want to know more about what happens when you go into a school. Like, can you talk more about kind of the trajectory? You walk in, the kids are not welcoming or whatever, and then what happens through the course of, like, how do you see the change come about and how do the kids respond?
It's really easy question.
Well, I think basically I answered it. The metaphor of active volcano is not far away from reality. We are talking about two angry societies. We are talking about children who are brainwashed. And for the Palestinians, I'm personally responsible for everything happened to them and to their mother that morning in the checkpoint. And for the Israelis, Bassam Aramin is personally responsible for every rocket from Gaza to Sderot. And the ability to put a bridge and to talk to these people in the eye level, like human beings, almost does not exist. And you look at YouTube. There is a piece, Rami and Bassam, at Denmark High School. Denmark High School is one of the worst high schools in the country. It's the origin of La Familia, all the supporters of Beitar Yerushalayim football club. They are the worst of the worst. And when Bassam opened his mouth, they started to make noises and interfere. And the headmaster jumped and tried to stop them. And Bassam stopped him and said to him, "How can you get respect if you don't give respect? How can you speak up without being listened to?" And the atmosphere was quiet. You can see it on YouTube. Look for it.
Thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Yes, in a minute. I think this.
I'll come to you afterwards.
Yep, next. Thank you.
My question is just kind of piggybacking off of what you said there in terms of just generally speaking, do you have faith in the youth in terms of them being more open-minded to embrace cooperation and to move past this hatred, and also how they might be able to affect the political environment in Israel going forward, especially in light of recent elections? I think there was a lot of frustration, especially among the youth, regarding disappointment in terms of the fact that they were hoping to move forward, but it seems that it's not moving at the same pace. So we'd like to get some.
Can I take that one, Rami? Can I just take that one? Not to speak on their behalf in this particular situation, but listen, Greta walked out one Friday afternoon. That's all she did. She walked out of her classroom. And she said, "I'm doing this because I'm protesting climate change." And then guess what? She had the courage of her convictions to walk out the second week. And on the third week, a couple of kids followed her. And on the fourth week, then lots of kids followed her. And then on the fifth week, somebody wrote a story about it. A year and a half later, she's the face of climate change. I truly believe that there's going to be someone come along and do this sort of thing, which is in the spirit of what I see it in. I do high schools all over this country and now all over the world with Narrative 4, and if I have faith, it is faith in these younger people. But also, please remember what I said about the fact that Greta could be 75 years old. Maybe we're going to do something ourselves, step out of the classroom or the supermarket, whatever else it happens to be. We can do it. It just takes some sort of fierce, some fierce loyalty to the idea that you can be cynical, yes, and the world is really a shitty place, but so what? That's no great revelation. The real revelation comes in turning it around.
In fact, it's not part of the narrative in both sides. What happened that the Israelis understand they hate the Palestinians because the Palestinians teach their kids to hate the Israelis. So once I have argued with someone high and well-educated, why you hate us? So I said, do you think your education, it's hatred education? You don't know, you didn't feel that you hate the other side because they hate you. But did you talk to other side? Do you know that Mahmoud Darwish told us, I have no time to hate those who hates me. I am busy to love those who loves me. This is how we grow up our kids, but you don't know that. I believe that the Palestinian enemy in the Israeli side is the Israeli fear. It's ongoing fear, forever. We need to prove that we are human beings. We need to prove to our occupiers that you will be safe. Just release us from the jail of the occupation. You need to talk to the people. And we believe that it starts and ends with the education. For that, in the parent circle, we have a lot of educational projects to teach the both sides that we are human beings. We are the same. We are mirrors to each other. To that extent that the Palestinians, we become the Jews of the Middle East. Exactly. History repeats itself. No one wants us, even in many Arab states, our brothers and sisters. They need to understand that. They need that we are not going to move from this land. I am not Syrian. I am not Jordanian. I am not Saudi. We will be there. And again, what Mahmoud Darwish says to his soldier in the checkpoint, she was a woman, and she asked him, are you here again? But I killed you yesterday, didn't I? And he said, yes, you killed me, but I am like you. I forget to die. So we forget to die. We will exist together. We prefer to live together side by side, or we will continue to kill each other forever, as long as the occupation continues. We will never accept it. We are human beings. Whatever you call it, control, occupation, a promised land, it doesn't work. We need to be free. Then the Israelis will feel free and peace. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much to all of you. Sorry for reading it out, cry, sorry.
Trust me, I feel
Thank you.
exactly. That's a beautiful response. Trust me, and just take a big deep breath, because that's what I had to do when I first experienced this. Just take a big deep breath, and this is a really good thing.
And don't break our hearts because it's already broken.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. So, thank you so much for coming and speaking with all of us. And I am just asking maybe a simple and maybe a very complicated question of, as Americans of all different religions and whatever, what can we do? What can we do?
She looked at Rami, I think. Right?
Well, I think I put it very simply. Don't stand aside. Make a point. Make a stand. And don't be collaborators with this ongoing crime. Your president just offered a deal of the century, which is a big joke. It's a wedding without a bride. And you don't have to support it. Your ongoing support in Israel, one-sided, unconditional, is longing our suffering. You're not a broker, honest broker. Your deals cost blood. The deal of the century will have a price. The price is our daughters. When you push someone to the corner, when you humiliate them, when you beat them, they will bite back. And the Americans will sit comfortably in their houses, watch CNN or Fox News, depends. There will be no American soldier coming to protect me or to protect him. We will have to pay the price of this stupidity, and it's your task to protest against it, not to have it, because it's done in your name.
And Martin Luther King says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Hi, I'm a high school senior from this area, and thank you so much for speaking. It was so meaningful. And Colum, I've been a huge fan for a very long time, and thanks to my dear mother who has introduced me to your books. And I find what I keep on seeing cropping up in your books, and also hopefully in life, is this idea of radical love, of this idea that you have to love your enemies as you love your friends for us to move forward in this world. And I was wondering, how do you see that? You know, you write a lot about people who aren't necessarily who you grew up with or who you initially knew, you know, outside of what I would say is your typical sphere. How do you think that radical love factors into writing about people who are not within that sphere?
Wow. Can you run for president? Can we lower the age and
It's more clever than.
Radical love and radical empathy and stepping into to one another's shoes. Look, I think that's what good literature does. When I read Claire's work and when I read the work of people who I love, they allow me to step into a brand new world and broaden my heart and broaden my lungs in all sorts of ways. I think that we got to do it at the high school level. Obviously, in your high school, there's something really, really good happening. One of the very simple ways, and just even in relation to the last question, is can we respect our teachers a little bit more? All those people who are there. I'm going a lot on book tour right now, and I hear this stuff. If you're in military uniform or if you're in active military duty, please get on the plane first, which is cool. I'm happy with that. That's good. Do that. I mean, but I can't wait till the day that you take your teacher's card up there and you get on the plane first. Why shouldn't that happen? Why shouldn't that happen? It's like. We got to reprioritize, and radical love and radical empathy is about reprioritizing things and looking around at the people. Narrative 4 is built by artists, but it's really teachers who are the ones who have so much power. And then people like you will come along and say these things and do these things, and and you've got to have faith that it will occur. And as I say, it's not like some sort of like weird kumbaya stuff. It's really real. It's really raw and really tough. And it's much, much, much more difficult to be a peacemaker than it is to be a war maker.
Hi. Thank you so much. And my name is Terry Green. My brother died on United Flight 93, and I'm here with Andrea LeBlanc, whose husband also died on 9/11, who I believe Rami and Bassam, you know. My question is about so next year is 20 years from 9/11, and I imagine there'll be quite a bit of hoopla. I imagine again, our losses will be used towards promulgating fear and hate. And we've tried since forming the organization September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows back in 2002 to counter that narrative, but we get drowned out a lot. And I guess I just wonder, having you here and all of you here, about ideas for how to approach that commemoration in particular to be able to get ahead of it.
I believe you are very noble people, because this is the whole idea, how we remember, why we remember. The use and the abuse of history and memory. Some people use them for more killing, for more victims, and some people became lights or candle in the darkness. It's exactly like you. And this is our message. I said sometimes that in Israel, Palestine, we kill our kids with our own hands, even without taking responsibility, because we said we will continue their way, the fighters. Means we need to prepare our other kids to kill and to be killed. This is the culture. In Palestine, we are terrorists. In Israel, they are organized soldiers. It's an army. But we are both become very brutal societies. So I said, for the memory of Abir, for the memory of Smadar, we don't want to see more blood. This is the message, to look forward to the new generations, to protect them, and to spread the message of love according to your values. You think everything comes from Christianity is love, love your enemy, God forgive them because they know not what they do. You need to follow these values. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I would say you got to tell the story over and over and over and over and over and over again. John Berger says, never again will a single story be told as if it were the only one. And anybody who tries to paint you into a corner to say that you're the only one sort of story, you fight back and say, no, I'm complicated, I'm nuanced, and again, I'm much more purple than I am red or blue. And then when you start to do, if we can do that sort of stuff, if, big if, then I think we turn things around a little bit.
I would like to add few words to it. Bassam is always speaking the truth, and you and Andrea, all you people are admirable, and we salute you. The issue is, how do you tell your story and for what purpose? I carry on my back 3,000 years of Jewish story. We are born with it. It's under our skin, the victimhood mentality. We send our kids to Auschwitz when they are 16 years old to learn how to become victims, the ultimate victims. No one else is allowed to be victim. And they come back draped with the national flag, and the next day they stand in a checkpoint, and this 18-year-old soldier have to decide whether this old 70-year-old guy is a time bomb or just a grandfather, which is inhuman. And it's a question of decision, a personal decision. And I will tell you that I has promised myself that I will not use my victimhood in order to victimize other people. This is the essence of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. There will now be a signing outside, and you're welcome to adjourn. And I think, as Colum says, continue the conversations. And a big thank you to Colum McCann, to Bassam Aramin, and to Rami Elhanan. So thank you very much.
Claire Messud, thank you so much. Amazing.